Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be giving you my Aquarius 2022 horoscope forecast. Now, and yes, it does apply and pertain to the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant anyway. Well, as far as this the forecast for Aquarius for 2022 goes, what I'm going to start off with is the Jupiter transits and how that may impact Aquarius this year. Now, the thing is, Jupiter is going to be in Pisces and Aries in 2022. So, for the time that it's in Pisces, the second house is going to be emphasized and highlighted. So, for Aquarius, so at this time, well, first off, it could be prosperity, doing something Pisces related and making in as far as income generated. I mean, the second house is about our money that we make, and Jupiter's prosperity. So it can be where one may be prosperous doing something with poetry or dancing or photography, chemistry, the metaphysical, which includes astrology. It might also enlarge and expand, sacrificing your possessions, your things, your money. Maybe you show more altruism in matters of a monetary material nature at this point in time, more so than usual. It can be a time too where you might be at this time as well. As I've talked about in previous videos, Jupiter can be very paradoxical, could be very benign and benevolent, but could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. It might enlarge and expand deception, duplicity in monetary matters. I'm not saying you're being deceptive in monetary matters per se, but it could be where you might be more susceptible, say, to financial fraud, to somebody giving you, some phony or fraudulent investment, and they say, it's going to bring in, you put this much money in, it's going to give you this much in return, and then nothing happens, or you find out that the business is may not even exist, as Pisces is what's imaginary, keep in mind. So it can also be a time where you might express more exuberance and enthusiasm. As far as it could be going back to Pisces, money-making endeavors again, such as like poetry, dancing, or photography, to name some. But it could also, and sadly, it could enlarge and expand the dissolving or dissipation of money, in some cases your possessions, or it could be even your self-worth and your self-esteem and how you feel about yourself at this time. So it might also enlarge confusion in monetary matters, but it could also be about finding the truth out. Jupiter is connected with veracity and the truth. You might find the truth out more, maybe more of a discovery about some latent talents and abilities, which again could be Pisces related. It could be doing things as a chemist, or poetry, or dancing, anything that could be related to Pisces. Now, Jupiter is going to be in Aries for part of 2022. So for Aquarius, at this time, the third house will be emphasized and highlighted. Now, as I've spoken about before, about Jupiter being paradoxical, it can have a tendency to enlarge and expand. In some cases, it might enlarge and inflate contentious or acrimonious situations with siblings, with cousins and neighbors. It might also enlarge very direct communications in general, being more outspoken at this time. It could also be very fortuitous, I would say, too, for doing something, for speaking, again, very direct, outspoken manner about being, maybe just through being aggressive or expressing initiative and enterprise in writings. At this time, it might turn out to be something very beneficial for you. If you're trying to write for somebody, and you're doing basically an audition, you're doing your sending in that test paper, just a little writing, and just to see get a review on it, and it might be something that might have positive, reward from it. It might be something where it might result in some, writing position as an example, but also too. Um, this could also be, Jupiter being connected with prosperity. It could be prosperous for doing something with welding or carpentry in your area, in your neighborhood, or doing so with siblings, with cousins, with neighbors at this time. Um, it could be something very beneficial for showing courage and fortitude in with your neighborhood, with your neighbors. It could be where maybe you become like a neighborhood watch leader in your area. Um, it can also enlarge and expand, very impulsive, short journeys, and it could also be accidents that might occur as well when driving. So just be careful, at this time, Aquarius. But at the same time, it could also enlarge. It could be very positive, fortuitous, for maybe pioneering thinking at this time. Aquarius, you're often have ingenious ideas anyway. This could really be a good time for you. So now, anyway, getting to Saturn. Well, Saturn's going to be in Aquarius for the entirety of 2022. So the first house is what will be emphasized and highlighted for Aquarius. So at this time, well, especially if it's making a conjunction to your Ascendant Aquarius, it could be a time where there might be greater tendency to lose weight. You might become more thin at this time. There could also be greater propensity for, there could be some chronic issues with the ankles, the shins, the calves, the nerves, circulation. Could be where a father may be more prominent and instrumental in new beginnings. It can be something Aquarius related, such as something with astronomy, astrology, computers, electronics, innovation, aviation, to name some examples. Could also be There might also be issues that are associated with Saturn physically, such as something with the knees, the bones, the joints, the hamstrings, the gallbladder. And you may come across as more serious than usual at this time, Aquarius, and it could be a time too where you might wind up, you might be involved in some hard labor, people that were prominent in your early childhood, or maybe even helping a grandparent at this time, and doing so very with a lot of selfless energy, doing so very altruistically at this time. Now, for some Aquarius, as example, Aquarius rising people, you're going to have the transit of Saturn in the 12th house for at least at least part of the transit. Some of you, sadly, in some cases, it could manifest in the loss, of the father. Sometimes it could be the sad demise of a father. I have Saturn in my 12th house natally, and I lost my father when I was 3 years old. Or it could be where the time might be more limiting, might be more limitations with the father at this time. It might be where the connection may not be as strong, or maybe the father needs some time for solitude and seclusion and wants to be by himself and might be isolating himself at this time, might be kind of disappearing at this time as well. But you also might be bearing more of your sorrow secretively in solitude and seclusion. It might be harder to express any kind of sorrow or sadness at this point in time. But it could also be a time for laborious work and seclusion. It could be doing something Aquarius related, such as something with astrology or the computers or the internet, astronomy, aviation. It might be humanitarian or some kind of altruistic endeavors. It could be helping, say for example, providing Tech labs, which could be connected with Aquarius for people less fortunate, such as inner city children, as another example. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back, but anyway. Now the next thing up, okay, Uranus is going to be in Taurus for the entirety of 2022. So the fourth house will be emphasized and highlighted for Aquarius. Now this can manifest in a number of ways. You may be dealing, with a rather, erratic or unstable home or family life. There may be more greater propensity or susceptibility to accidents in the home. It could be electric shock. Just be careful at this time. Electricity, or it could be lightning hitting the home. Is another example. You may also be dealing, it could be where Uranus is friendships. So it could be where, in Taurus are ones that could be very loyal, stable, steady, steadfast. It could be very loyal friendships. Might figure more prominently in your home-related matters at this time. And might be people you feel strongly close to home with as well. And also, too, the fourth house represents the latter part of life. And you might be, at this time, maybe it could be that your friendships might be helping you plan for this time, for this latter part of life, at this point in time. And that's and Uranus being connected with goals and aspirations. That could be, your goal and aspirations at this time may be connected with getting yourself ready for the latter part of life, having that money. Taurus is connected with money, having that money, which is going to be, to help you, obviously benefit you at that point in time. If you're not currently in, if you're not currently in the latter part of life. Now, you might also be experiencing more disruptions with your security and safety at this time. Maybe there's a situation where crime might be escalating, in your, near your home, in your neighborhood. Could be dealing with a stalker as another example in some isolated situations, or there's some internet harassment that could be taking place, to name, basically to state some examples. And you might be, and also home or family members might be acting in a more bizarre manner or an unusual fashion, more so than usual at this time. But you also may be more involved with computers at home at this time, Aquarius, more so than you may ordinarily would. And these are some ways, this could, at this time, as far as this transit goes, may manifest and pan out. So anyway, well, the next thing I want to get to is, as far as Neptune goes, Neptune's going to be in Pisces for the entire 2022. So the second house is what's going to be emphasized and highlighted. So, one way this transit may be expressed for Aquarius, there might be some issues, with money. Money situation might be nebulous or unclear. Perhaps, you've got to guard against, Neptune is about, it's fallacious, deceptive. Pisces can be associated with psychics and mediums. Don't let, a phony psychic steer you in the wrong direction and take your money, and then promises a lot and delivers nothing. It could also be a time where compassion, forgiveness, sacrifice, altruism, these can all be things that are tied in with your values at this time. Maybe expressing these qualities might improve self-worth and self-esteem. At the same time, you might feel as if your self-worth and self-esteem at this time, Aquarius, may be dissipating and dissolving. It can be a time, too, where, the second house is also connected with latent talents and abilities. So it could be something going to Neptune and Pisces, where maybe some of your latent talents and abilities may be something Neptune Pisces related, again, uh, such as poetry or photography or dancing, or doing something with special effects or illusion. Um, Maybe it's doing something of a spiritual nature, doing something of the metaphysical, which can include astrology. Um, Neptune is also about inspiration. Maybe it's just simply where you're able to inspire, be inspirational to others. Maybe about motivating them. It could be through, being like a motivational guru, as an example. So, and also too, Neptune is associated with flooding. So just be careful at this time, Aquarius, because flooding, might impact. I mean, might naturally, if you're flooding your home, that could have a negative impact on your possessions at this point in time. And it's something too where you might be, some cases it could reflect a betrayal or some deception or duplicity might impact your self-worth and self-esteem, or there might be a greater susceptibility to some kind of financial fraud that you might be more vulnerable to at this time. It's a time where you might be more gullible regarding financial, whether it's investment, I guess you say investments, deals at this time. And the thing is, and again, you might have some confusion in matters with self-worth, self-esteem, and how you feel about yourself. Maybe you're not understanding, why you don't, maybe, for example, why you don't feel as good about yourself, why your self-worth is low, what's actually happening, what's the cause of that, and maybe there's confusion as far as that goes, or maybe there's confusion in terms of how to augment your self-worth and self-esteem at this time, as another example. But anyway, well, last but not least, I'm going to be talking about Pluto and Capricorn. And so for Aquarius, the 12th house is what will be emphasized and highlighted. So at this time for Aquarius, well, this could manifest in a number of ways. In some cases, this may reflect, sadly, the death of an aunt or an uncle. It could be more propensity for having like nightmares, you could say. I mean, 12th house is the house of dreams. Pluto rules things that are nuclear. Um, it might also be a time too where you might become overly obsessed or fixated, with a private life at this time. Now, in isolated cases, I mean, keep in mind, 12th house is the house of mental illness, so it's important to be careful at this time. Um, there can be some obsessive qualities, there's some obsessive or compulsive disorder, you know, may occur in some isolated cases, um, as Pluto is connected with obsessive and compulsive energy. And it could also be simply where being obsessed over something may simply be the undoing. A death that may have occurred, maybe something you may bear sorrows about that secretly at this time, whether it was a recent death or maybe something that may have even happened years ago. Um, it's a time too where you may be trying to get more power and control in your private life at this time. And the thing about this is that, and it's also about, the 12th house is also hidden adversaries. So it could be where you might be dealing, you might be in a situation where you're trying to, maybe have some control over them and try to do, it could be where the fact that Pluto is also connected with secrets. The 12th house is the hidden, so it can be a time where things are really, it might just simply be more hidden at this time. You might really be trying to keep your secrets under the radar more so even than usual at this time, Aquarius. And it can be where, at this time as well, Pluto is also about, destruction and obliteration. I stated before the 12th house has a connection, is associated with hidden enemies. Now, it can be a time where these people may be destroyed. I don't mean killed, but what I'm saying is that you put, them, there may be a figurative ending to these people. Like, say if it's a friend or somebody that's impersonating a friend, but is really working against you and slandering you or whatever and bashing you behind your back. It could be a time where you may you feel more like ending those connections at this time. So it could be positive, for you, Aquarius, as far as that goes. And it could also be, time to where when you have this transit, you might feel like there's some limitation or in your control and power, whether it's over your life or whatever it might be. You might feel that your private life is destroyed, at this time. But at the same time, you might also express a lot of desire and passion for doing something 12th house related, such as the metaphysical, which includes astrology. It could be prison or hospital work, doing something with spirituality, poetry, dancing, photography, as some examples. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.